When we mainly think about the term onboarding outside of human resources, most people, when they hear that term, they think about maybe boarding a plane or a boat. And let's think about that for a few minutes. If you're a traveler, what keeps you coming back to a specific airlines or cruise? Is it the cost? You gave them money and received something of value in return. Is it the efficiency of the operations? Is it the customer service you received? Is it that you enjoyed the experience and want to repeat that again? Well, for an airlines or for a cruise line, aren't returning passengers a good thing? Well, then why shouldn't we approach new hires through orientation and onboarding in our businesses is the same way? So these are some of the topics that we're going to talk about today. To be honest with you, one of my hobbies is being a gardener. And employees are kind of like plants. They thrive and bloom when they need to be rooted in a rich soil and a nurturing environment. And they need to extra care in the beginning to get them to be thriving. Well, some employees don't have a green thumb, and so they treat new hires like a cactus, and they expect them to flourish in an arid, remote atmosphere. And we want to talk about today some things that you can do to help increase the value of your employees going forward, so that not only will they stay and become employees that value their experience, but maybe so they can attract other good employees to your firm. Let's talk a little bit, though, about the hiring process. And let's talk about how much money that we do invest in our new hires. Because as we think about the cost and the investment we have made in these employees just to get them to day one, we need to think about what we want to do to keep them motivated, to retain them, and to help prepare them for day two with our employers. So let's talk about what it takes to get them in the door. If you think about the cost of hire, to hire somebody, we need to think about the time to create that requisition, create that ad, maybe with all the resumes that we get in, and we may take time to run a query in the applicant tracking software. We're going to review some resumes. We're going to schedule and conduct the interviews between HR and the hiring manager and team members. We're going to perhaps prepare an offer letter or accept letter. We may give them some pre-employment tests, and we may conduct any follow-up prior to the hiring or to them actually showing up on day one. If you think about all that takes a lot of time, and any time we're committing time in a workplace, that's costing us. I mean, if you think about how many resumes you review, and I know today with the job market, we employers are getting a lot of resumes in. So how do we decide which ones that we're going to act on, which ones are we going to put back in our applicant tracking system? If you have 25 resumes and you take the time to review those, and then somebody has to call them and do an initial screening interview, and then you bring them in and conduct an on-site interview, that's a lot of investment we're making, which we hope in the end will be a good investment. But it does take time. So again, we need to make sure that not only are we taking the time and nurturing that build-up cost, that ramp-up cost, but we are doing something to validate that investment. Because if that new hire leaves, not only do we have to look at the cost to hire that we just talked about on the previous slide, but we really need to think about the loss to productivity, because if that new hire comes in and they leave after a month or 90 days or a year, we've invested a lot of training in them. There's a lot of ramp-up costs to get that person productive. So bottom line, when we think about turnover, it's typically about 1/3 to 1/2 the annual cost of a position. So in that regard, turnover is very expensive. So in order to maybe minimize turnover, let's think about onboarding. And the definition of onboarding is really the process of building a relationship with employees. And studies have continued to demonstrate that employee engagement is determined by how new employees are treated during orientation, during the first 30 to 90 days of employment. So when we think about the onboarding, it's not just getting them in the door, but it's how that we treat them that day one, that first week, that first month, that first year. And those are some of the things we want to talk about. We know that if we can build that relationship with the employees, that it increases that employee's engagement or buy-in. It makes them feel that, you know, they have made a good decision in coming to work for us. It gets them excited about understanding the value, the mission, the relationships, where we want to go with the work. By doing a good job of onboarding people and getting them to be engaged and building that relationship, we're building that employee loyalty. And we know in today's environment that that employee loyalty on both sides of the fence are somewhat eroded because employees feel like, you know, it's a churn and burn relationship with employers today. So if we as a good employee can be proactive and build that loyalty, then our employees will want to remain with us, which will only help our mission in terms of being profitable because we're spending less time with turnover and hiring people, and we're investing more time and dollars in employee development and employee retention activities. The benefits of onboarding also, as you'll see during some of the things that we're going to talk about today, it enhances the understanding of expectations. One of the things that I know frustrates new employees is they feel like they never understand what's expected of them until they figure out they're not doing it, they're not meeting the expectations, and then we have a performance problem. So one of the benefits of onboarding is during those first critical 90 days, we have a plan so that we're sitting down with employees repeatedly and we're talking to them about the expectations. When we talk about onboarding and orientation, there's really three parts to the process. One is before the employment date, what things are we going to do to start this onboarding process. The next is the first day of employment. And then we're going to break it down to after the first day. Before the first day, what are some types of activities that we can do to help build that process? One is to send that accept letter. You know, we talk a lot about an acceptance letter or an offer letter, but really what we're sending out is the acceptance letter. We're confirming that the employee has agreed to the offer that we have provided and has accepted whatever terms that we've talked about, either that have been in that offer letter or any subsequent negotiations that we've been able to come to terms on. We typically send out the benefit information, the company newsletter, maybe provide them with the organizational chart. Perhaps we give them some new hire forms. And this can either be done via the web or we can do this with through the U.S. Post Office. But we just want them to start feeling a part of that organization before day one. We understand that a lot of times when an offer is made, that there may be a week or sometimes 2 weeks before that person actually starts. So we need to make sure that we are nurturing that environment and paving that road. So sending out information like this, calling that new hire to welcome them to the organization, either from the HR or really with the new supervisor, with the new manager, can start that person feeling part of that organization really before they step on the property as a new employee.